Welcome back to another AP US History video lecture on the period of Reconstruction. So this is the period right after the Civil War. And this is a very exciting period because it is sort of a watershed moment in AP US history as to what is happening for the country after it has fallen apart during the Civil War. And the country is facing a lot of big problems in 1865. For one thing, they're facing major racial tensions. And I'm not just talking here about the racial tension between freed black slaves and white people, but rather the perception that white people had in the South that black people were to blame for the Civil War. The other huge problem was, how do you get these states who had basically been treasonous back into the country after the Civil War was done? And then with the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, how do you deal with a vacuum of leadership? Plus, to top all of this off, there is a outright fight in Congress between what are known as the Radical Republicans and Andrew Johnson. We'll get into that. My thesis overall for this particular video lecture is this. Reconstruction was actually a success for a time. It actually provided for incremental rights for African Americans. But eventually it failed due to political compromises and the lack of the support from the Supreme Court. So let's start off with the problems. In 1865, when the Civil War ends, the big question is, how do you bring the states back into the Union? When we look at it today, we just say, okay, yeah, the Civil War ended. But keep in mind, at that time period, the people who had broken away from the country were seen as a bunch of traitors. Abraham Lincoln thought the best way to deal with this was what he called the 10% plan, in which he would have people in each one of the states, only 10% would have to vote to re-enter the Union. His idea was to heal wounds, bring people back, and reunite the country. Radical Republicans in the Congress had a different belief. They believed in something called the 50% plan, which was passed under what was called the Wade-Davis bill, which Lincoln vetoed. The idea was 50% of people in each one of the states had to prove that they were loyal. Well, Lincoln is assassinated, and when he's assassinated, we have to have new leadership. And his new leadership falls to his vice president, Andrew Johnson, who had been born in North Carolina and lived most of his life in Tennessee. Andrew Johnson was asked to be vice president in 1864. Why? Abraham Lincoln was afraid of losing the election, and he wanted to bring the border states into his voting bloc to make sure that he would win that election. Problem was this: Andrew Johnson was an explicit and outright racist. Andrew Johnson hated the Confederates. He hated them for having been treasonous and leaving the country. But he also hated African Americans. And he believed that while, African Americans were eventually going to gain their freedom, he didn't really think they were equal on any kind of level within racial hierarchies. So he allowed for things like the Black Codes in the South. The Black Codes were passed after the Civil War, prohibiting black people from renting or buying land, prohibiting black people from testifying in court against white people. Andrew Johnson would veto the Civil Rights Bill of 1866, which would have made black people citizens against the Dred Scott case. Eventually, this led up to a huge fight that took place after the election of 1868. In the election of 1868, the Congress switched to the Radical Republicans, and they set a trap for Andrew Johnson. It was called the Office of Tenure Act. What they said in Congress was that Andrew Johnson would have to go through them in order to hire or fire people in his cabinet. Now, the cabinet is not in the Constitution. The cabinet was created by the executive. It was created by George Washington. So Andrew Johnson's in a tricky situation here. If he agrees with this law that was passed and he goes through Congress, he gives up presidential power. If he disagrees, the Congress can claim he broke the law, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He fires a man named Edwin Stanton, who was Secretary of War. Edwin Stanton was also an abolitionist. Well, the Radical Republicans had what they wanted. They were able to basically impeach Andrew Johnson, and by impeachment, what that means is he was brought up under inquiry in the House of Representatives. He was found to have violated in the Constitution high crimes and misdemeanors. That means his case then goes to the Senate. The Senate then puts him on trial to determine whether or not he will remain president. Well, Andrew Johnson survived that Senate trial by one vote, so he wins. Problem is, he loses in the sense that he is now a weakened president. And in the next presidential election, Ulysses S. Grant is going to win. So the conclusion here is that the Radical Republicans are going to take power. And when they do, they decide to do a military reconstruction of the South. When the Radical Republicans come into office, they already had the 13th Amendment, which was passed back in 1865, ending slavery. They then passed the 14th Amendment in 1866 and had it ratified in 1868. This gave African Americans their right to citizenship, and it gave them their right to due process under the law. And then there was the 15th Amendment that was passed in 1869, and Ulysses S. Grant signed it. This allowed for African Americans to have the right to vote. At the same time, radical Republicans were going to set up 5 military districts in the South, and they said that in order for the South to get out from underneath these military districts, they would have to follow the 60% plan. 60% of people would have to vote to rejoin the Union. Well, there were some huge successes during this time period. For example, black senators Blanche Bruce and Hiram Revels from the South were elected and sent to the Senate. There were 12 African Americans sent to the House of Representatives, and black voting increased at the time. There was more voting overall for people in general, and there were more property rights for women. In fact, the federal government helped to develop more roads and highways in the South. However, the South was going to respond, and they responded in a way to put African Americans in what I would claim is a situation even worse than slavery. Okay, how can I make that claim? Let's start off at the basis, and it's sharecropping. When African Americans were freed from slavery, that was a huge advancement. Nothing else could happen for African American rights if African Americans were not free from slavery. In fact, when African Americans were freed from slavery, there are stories of them wandering throughout the South to find their families from different plantations. There are stories of them literally falling on the ground weeping, thanking Abraham Lincoln for ending slavery. African Americans were incredibly grateful for the fact that slavery had finally come to an end. But here's the problem. If you're an African American living under slavery and you've just been freed, what do you have to your name? You don't have land, you don't have money, you don't have wealth. So you got to go seek out a job. And what are you trained in? Well, you're trained in agriculture. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to go and you're going to rent land. And you rent land from the people who own the land in the area, which are ex-Confederates. Ex-Confederates who owned land started renting out land under a system called sharecropping, in which they would hire both poor blacks and poor whites. But they would charge such a high rent to blacks and whites that by the end of the year, if anything went wrong in a crop rotation, you basically were in debt to the owner. On top of that, sharecroppers could demand that black and white people who worked for them would have to go out and buy tools from them as well. Before long, black people were put into high debt to these sharecroppers. Granted, that's not legal slavery, but it's a form of debt slavery, and it's going to get worse. Black people had the right to vote under the amendment number 15. Problem was, in order to vote in the South, they would have to do the following things. One, in most states, they had to pass what was called a literacy test, in which they would have to demonstrate that they had basic reading skills in order to be able to vote. Another example was something called the grandfather clause, in which they would have to, in some states like Mississippi, prove that their grandfather had voted. Now, just think about how ridiculous that is. African Americans have been in slavery. What's the likelihood their grandfather voted in the South? Then there's also poll taxes. In most states, both poor whites and poor blacks would have to pay a tax in order to vote. Now, if you're already poor, what's the likelihood you're going to have enough money to pay to vote as well? Now, let's say, though, an African American gets past all those hurdles. They studied extremely hard, which most did, in order to make sure that they could register to vote. That was a huge sign of pride. They paid the poll tax. They made sure to show that their grandfather had escaped from slavery and somehow had voted up in the North. Well, there was one more thing that the South created, and they created it in Tennessee, and it was called the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was originally created in Tennessee as sort of a white freedmen's way of protecting themselves in the South against this military Reconstruction. But it very quickly became a way for white people to terrorize black people in the South. The story is, people in the Ku Klux Klan would ride into black townships and go up to people's houses late at night and knock on doors. And when people came to the door, these Ku Klux Klan members were wearing white sheets, and they pretended to be ghosts, and they would ask for a cup of water, and they would have this little concoction underneath their sheet in which people would pour the water down, and it wouldn't go in their mouth, but into this concoction. It was meant to give this sense of like these ghosts who were at your house. Well, that quickly turned into burning crosses and hanging people outside of their house as well, or lynching. And all of this comes to an end in the election of 1874. In the election of 1874, Samuel Tilden from New York, who's a Republican, is going to run against Rutherford B. Hayes, a Democrat. Tilden won the popular vote, and he won the Electoral College vote, but he didn't have enough electoral college votes. He had 184 to 165. And the problem was many of the states had given disputed votes back, including, for example, Florida. In the end, this went to the House of Representatives. And in the House of Representatives, a committee was made in which there was a determination behind closed doors that Tilden, the Republican, would become president if the North gave up on military reconstruction. That ended Reconstruction. What made it even worse was what was going to happen in 1896. In 1896, a man named Plessy was riding on a railroad car throughout the South across states, and as he was told that he was black and therefore had to move to the back of the railroad cars. Now, to make this even more ironic, Plessy was about what we would say is 1/16 black, whatever that means, and why does it matter? But the point is, in each one of these states, they would actually have these kinds of formulas that you could be 1/16, 1/8, 1/4 black, and because of that, you would not have the same rights as a white person under black codes. Eventually, this went all the way to the Supreme Court, and this was tried as a case about the issue of whether or not, under the 14th Amendment, did it really mean what it said, that basically black and white people were equal, they were equal citizens. Well, the Supreme Court came back with an interesting decision. They said that what the 14th Amendment really meant was something called separate but equal, and that became the principle that would go all the way into the 1950s. What is the idea? The idea of separate but equal was this. As long as different racial groups are treated equally, they can be separated. So as long as you have the exact same equal conditions, why can't you have black people in one train car and white people in another? Well, when you think about it, aside from the fact that this is just absurd, it's also not what was really going on. It's kind of obvious that this was really a way to justify racism. At no time did the South ever treat black people as equals. Even when they would give them these so-called different conditions, the different conditions were always unequal, demonstrating the real purpose was to intimidate and to put black people right back into slavery without really calling it slavery. So what are our takeaways? Number one. So what are our takeaways? Number one, Reconstruction really wasn't a failure, and there were possibilities for a success. Politically, there were amendments that had been passed. Keep in mind, there were 3 amendments passed to the American Constitution that gave black people freedom, that gave them equal rights, that gave them the ability to vote. And on top of that, there were black people who were being elected into government. There was a possibility, actually, to solve the rest of the problems as well. Just distribute out the land that was there and that was taken during the war and make sure that black people had something to their name. Unfortunately, this was not used. The Southerners saw the Civil War really as a fault in their mind of black people, and they recreated slavery without the actual legal backing of slavery. And they did this through debt slavery. And then last off, political compromise in the Supreme Court really put a seal on Southern reactions and would keep this new racial hierarchy in place all the way up to the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. Okay, I'll see you in class.